Ike is a powerful mage and the commander of the Undine Brigade in the Demon Lord's army. To conceal his human identity from many demons, he wears a skeleton mask. Currently, he leads an army of your mothers on a fierce assault on the city of Arsenum. His assistant Jiren has provided your mothers with a battering ram and orders to use it to breach the city walls. The humans are quickly overwhelmed once the breach is made, but the captain of the city guard watches from indoors and is soon confronted by Ike. From Ike's aura, the captain immediately recognizes him as the commander of the demonic brigade, and Ike soon introduces himself and offers the captain 3 choices: surrender and hand over the territories to the demons, die by his hands, or flee Arsenum, just like how my father left me. The city leader is taken aback by a demon showing mercy but rejects all the options and attempts to attack. However, Ike anticipates this and counters with a spell, quickly ending the fight. Standing over the unconscious body of his defeated foe, Jiren rushes into the room to ensure his master's safety. The assistant is astonished when Ike orders him to tend to the captain's wounds, extending this mandate to all the human soldiers who have surrendered. Sapphire observes everything from a crystal ball and is impressed that Ike managed to capture Arsenum with a single brigade within a week. She is pleased that her intuition about Ike's potential was correct. Meanwhile, Ike erects a powerful barrier around his new office and looks out at the massive wreckage that marked the end of the battle. Behind his sinister mask, Ike feels guilty about hurting so many of his kind, revealing that he is a soft-hearted individual who has never become accustomed to the gruesome nature of war. His teacher was the famous demon Romberg, a great mage with secret knowledge of an advanced civilization that once lived in the world. Romberg raised and never abandoned Ike despite him being human, imparting all his knowledge and magic to him. He then recalls Romberg's final warning, which was to never speak of the lost civilization, as it would bring disaster. He was also told to never remove his robe and mask because the Demon Lord will never forgive him if his identity was revealed. As the Demon Lord's warning echoed in his mind, Jiren felt secure within his powerful barrier, knowing that no one could enter without his permission. However, his sense of security was shattered when he discovered a maid hiding under the desk. The maid pleaded with him not to eliminate her, but Jiren was torn between his desire to cry and his duty to keep his identity a secret. He had kept it hidden for 20 years, and this was how it was revealed. After the battle, Jiren called his master for a post-battle update as they walked through the streets. They had successfully taken the castle, but the assistant expressed concerns about the number of humans living in the city. However, he was reassured that the new Demon Lord only cared about results and was not as brutal as the previous one. I'd explained that reducing the population would mean fewer people to pay taxes, but Arsenum was a trading city that required people to maintain commerce. As they walked, they were met by one of the city elders who inquired about the taxes they would need to pay to the Demon Lord's army. They were relieved to hear that the amount would remain the same as before, but the elder warned that any resistance to the army would be punished, regardless of rank. Meanwhile, Ike was suddenly transported to a location by Sapphire where a golem attacked him. He evaded the attack and blew the golem away with a powerful spell. But Sapphire, a core commander who outranked Ike, was impressed by his strength. She revealed that she was the only demon who knew his secret. I guessed that she wanted details on the events in Arsenum, but she informed him that her familiars had already told her everything. The reason for the summons was because the Demon Lord wanted to see him in person, which Sapphire believed was due to his impressive feat of taking Arsenum in a week. They would be teleporting to the Demon Lord's castle, and Sapphire ordered Ike to place his hand on her mommy milkers as they teleported. As Siggy regained consciousness after collapsing from fear, she tried to leave but was blocked by an invisible barrier. Turns out, Ike had left her a note and some food, which she devoured like there was no tomorrow. Meanwhile, Ike and Sapphire arrived at the Demon King's castle, where the miasma surrounding the area began to affect Ike as he is a human. A menacing guard stood at the door, ready to inspect anyone who entered. Making Ike worry, however, Sapphire casted a spell that gave him a demonic aura, fooling the guard. Sapphire cut the conversation short as they had an important meeting, explaining that the castle was a testament to the power and influence of the Demon Lord. Ike admired Sapphire's control of the flight spell as she glided along the long hallway. He then mentions that he could also use it, but only to jump high. But soon, the fake demon was told to wait outside while his superior talked to them first. During this interval, Ike shared some background information about the current Demon Lord, Derakun. He explained that Derakun had turned the tide of the war against humanity in a single battle and was the leader of the demons and the strongest man. Ike was excited to meet the highest commander in the army and kept his head down as he entered, bowing. However, he was told to raise his head and was shocked to see that Derakun, the Demon Lord, was a female. She welcomed him to the castle and praised him for conquering the impregnable fortress city of Arsenum in just 7 days. Ike, however, attributed his success to following orders and gave credit to Sapphire. Derekuten found his humility to be a very human trait, causing Ike to fear that his cover had been blown. Derekuten mentioned Ike's lineage, noting that he was the grandson of the man known as the Guardian of Hell. This background explained his humility, and the demon lord surmised that Ike was a man of deep thought. She highlighted his decision to spare the people of Arsenum and their leader, praising the minimal loss of life. Ike soon wondered if he should have acted more like a demon and exterminated more people to fit in, but he didn't believe that would have been the right thing to do. He asked for permission to speak and explained that humans would not obey terror, even if they feared it. Explaining that, historically, towns where leaders were executed by demons had lower productivity than those where leaders were left alive, a philosophy that was also shared by Romberg. Suddenly, Derekuten teleported close to Ike's face, commenting on how different he was from other demons. She expressed a desire to see his real face beneath the mask at their next meeting, before shifting behind him, informing him that she expected to see more impressive results. As soon as the area was clear, Ike fell to the floor, gasping for air, having been so tense that he couldn't breathe. He removed his mask to get more airflow, surprising Sapphiro, who had never seen him this nervous. Ike then confessed that behind this scary mask was a wimp, and he worried as Derekuten knew he was wearing one. His superior then revealed that their boss had given him a reward, although Sapphiro saw it more as a punishment. The scene then shifts to Ike returning to his office, where he found an empty dish and a sleeping Sadie. He kicked the chair to wake her up, and the maid bowed down and apologized frantically, promising to do anything if he didn't kill her. Ike, puzzled by her behavior, assured her that he wasn't going to harm her. She soon calmed down and revealed her name was 13, explaining that indentured servants were referred to by number, but she also shared her birth name, Sadie. However, Ike couldn't let her go now that she knew he was human, so she promised not to tell anyone and eagerly agreed to be his maid from then on. It was later revealed that Ike was made the ruler of a nearby domain, and Jiren congratulated him. Ike recalled the moment Sapphiro told him about his new territory, which was further south than Arsenum and now the new front line of the war. Even though it was a small town, it was critical to their army. His mission was to protect the area and double the current tax revenue. Ike soon informed his men that this would be the front line of the battle against humanity, and they could be attacked at any time. They needed to repair the destroyed town, which had been damaged by Sapphiro. However, Jiren informed Ike that it would take 6 months to repair the walls, but Ike believed they could do it in 1 month. To everyone's surprise, he used both humans and demons to complete the work, organizing them into 8-hour shifts for continuous progress. He even paid them to provide further incentive. Demonstrating his leadership by destroying a giant rock the demons were struggling to move, showing them he was capable and in control. In the next scene, another battle between humans and demons unfolds. The mages try to hold off the endless hordes invading their territory, but one of them believes it's sufficient to hurl multiple fire spells as a team, targeting the rows of monsters. However, these evil beings remain unscathed despite enduring such high-level magic. In no time, the city walls are breached, and the two forces clash physically, with the demons gaining the upper hand over the humans. As the battle happens, Derekuten receives news that the war against Rosaria is progressing well, but the region plans to form alliances with neighboring countries to mount a stronger resistance. Observing the tendency of humans to unite in the face of difficulty, Derekuten decides to leave this problem in Ike's hands while handling Ivalia's bureaucratic matters. A sorcerer, served tea by his new maid Sadie, acknowledges her concern about his fatigue, but remains focused on his tasks. On the other side of the conflict, Alistair, leader of the Order of the White Rose Knights, is summoned to retake Avalia. Her superior deems the loss of that territory humiliating and believes it is high time to stop letting the enemies underestimate humans. Meanwhile, in an alley of Avalia, a trickster runs a scam game, promising to double the bet for anyone who can guess under which cup the ball is hidden. With nothing else to do, Sei decides to take a guess, but having no money to bet, the game master gets irritated and yells at her. However, seeing her good nature, he suggests she bet something more physical instead of money. But before anything can happen, a spell lifts all 3 cups simultaneously, revealing that the ball was under none of them, causing those who lost money to demand retribution through violence. In the midst of this, Ike appears in the crowd without his disguise, stating he is on a mission to infiltrate among humans and observe them as enemies. As some of Avalia's troops patrol the city streets in a strange formation, Ike comments that the story about the King's Alliance seems true. Segi then asks what that is, and he explains it is an ancient alliance where countries unite in times of danger, setting aside their individual interests to prioritize the common good. This alliance has been activated 3 times in the past, and each time the Demon Lord was defeated with his forces pushed back. Curiously, Sadie becomes downcast upon hearing this, prompting Ike to ask why she is sad about a possible human victory. She reveals that in human society, a slave is always a slave, so if Ike disappears, she will likely end up on the streets becoming a bargaining chip for some servant trader. Hearing this, Ike comforts her, saying that the current demon lord is the strongest and wisest in history, ensuring their victory is certain. After speaking, he reflects that both humans and demons have numerous problems and wonders if there is any way to change this once and for all. Suddenly, the scammer from the cup game returns to confront Sadie, accusing her of performing the trick that lifted the cups. Beside him stands a gigantic brute ready to teach the meddler a lesson. However, Sadie argues that the man cheated, but he doesn't care about that. He just wants to recover his loss, be it money or whatever the girl can offer. Without being invited into the conversation, Ike looks around and sees no one else nearby and freezes the brute's legs, summoning sharp ice lances that float in the air. Next, he tries to question the scammer, but the man wouldn't shut up for even a second, so Ike drives a lance into his arm to convince him to be quiet. Ike then mentions the agitation of the local army and demands to know what the soldiers are talking about. But when the scammer tries to convince Ike that he knows nothing, the mage threatens him once more, this time with death. The scammer, fearing for his life, reluctantly divulges information about the impending alliance and Rosaria's plan to strike Evalia due to its weakened defenses. Satisfied with the intelligence gathered, Ike departs, leaving the men trapped in ice. Returning to his office, Ike surprises the Lord of Evalia with a visit from Lilith, an old friend inquiring about his absence. Ike then explains his observation in Rosaria, about to share insights when Lilith interrupts, questioning Sadie's presence. She then introduces herself, prompting Lilith to mock her appearance and offers herself as Ike's maid, insisting Sadie be dismissed and forbidding any flirtation with Ike. However, Sadie retorts humorously, questioning how she could flirt when deemed unattractive and asserting her rightful place as Ike's chosen servant. Lilith's patience wears thin, leading to a skirmish between the two, but is quickly interrupted by Gyron's arrival to witness the office turmoil. As evening falls, Rosaria's troops gather around Evalia, preparing for a surprise assault. Noticing the eerie silence and absence of local guards, one soldier notes the unsettling calm. As catapults ready for the attack, skeletons rise from the ground and goblin archers emerge from the mountains, catching the invading forces off guard. Witnessing this, Alistair orders a retreat atop Evalia's walls and Gyron praises the enemy commander's strategic plans. However, not all goes as planned as a mysterious archer from within Evalia's structures targets Ike, striking him in the back and incapacitating him. In another scene, news of the White Rose Knight's retreat reaches Rosaria's superior officer, who, outraged by the failure, orders Alistair's arrest. However, the subordinate questions this decision, highlighting Alistair's competency and the potential impact on morale, but the officer insists on upholding honor by punishing failure, regardless of rank. Meanwhile, Ike awakens in his bed, bandaged and without his mask, with Sapphiro by his side. Confused, he questions the situation, prompting Sapphiro to joke about his eagerness the previous night. She explains how she healed his arrow wound and confirms no human casualties during the battle. Concerned about suspicion from the Demon Lord, Ike ponders their future interactions and expresses his desire for coexistence between humans and demons, a principle firmly rooted in his beliefs. Sapphiro then leaves him to rest, reminding him of his humanity while Ike contemplates the implications of recent events. Examining the arrow that wounded him, Ike wonders if an infiltrator lurks within his ranks. Reaffirming his disguise, Ike prepares for Lilith's arrival, eager to see him recovered, with Sadie standing by, sharing the same relief. The demon, agitated, hisses at Sadie, trying to make her keep her distance, and the two engage in another round of squabbling until Gyron intervenes, throwing Lilith out and standing guard at the door to prevent her from re-entering. Sadie thanks him, calling the orc Mr. Ugly, which offends him. But Ike quickly corrects her, saying Gyron isn't that ugly, just has a rustic face and a chubby body. He then asks Gyron to locate the commander of the White Rose Knights. Later, after Gyron completes his surveillance, Ike learns that Alistair was imprisoned following the failed attack on Evalia. He heads to the prison, only to be interrupted by Lilith, who makes jokes about terrible humans being held there. Ike, losing his patience, warns her to stay quiet. But she insists that being alone is too boring, so the mage reluctantly allows her to accompany him as long as she remains silent. Upon reaching the prison gate, Lilith remarks that it's easy to get in due to the few guards, but Ike aims to avoid causing a commotion and prefers stealth. However, Lilith knocks out the guards, clearing the way. However, the prison is much larger than Ike anticipated. But Lilith quickly knocks out another guard, steals the key, and finds out that Alistair is on the top floor. But as they proceed, more soldiers attack them, so Lilith hands the keys to Ike and asks him to go ahead while she deals with the guards. Ike also reminds her to avoid unnecessary bloodshed. But in an instant, she fractures 14 of the opponent's bones and Ike pretends not to see. After reaching Alistair's cell, he unlocks the door, but it appears empty. Confused, Ike steps inside to analyze the situation and Alistair emerges from behind, so the mage quickly subdues her. However, Alistair assumes that Ike has come to mock her defeat. He ignores her and directly asks if she sent an infiltrator to Avalia to kill him. But instead of answering, Alistair questions whether Ike is truly a demon. Puzzled, he asks what she means, but guards quickly rush up the stairs, discovering the intruder. Taking advantage of the distraction, Alistair holds a knife to Ike's neck, considering the possibility that he might be human. Holding Ike hostage, she insists on asking if he is human or not, taking him outside the cell as guards arrive. In response, the commander of the Demon Brigade freezes time and pushes the guards away with magic. Suddenly, a massive soldier attacks him unexpectedly, but Ike evades the blow and shatters the floor beneath his opponent, causing him to plummet from the top floor of the vast prison. However, before the soldier falls, Ike casts a spell to cushion his descent, preventing his death. Watching this scene, Alistair wonders why Ike saved the soldier. Unable to move, the officer falls due to the collapsing floor beneath her, but Ike once again prevents another human's death. But the wizard tries to calm things by introducing himself formally. Impressed by his credentials, the woman is amazed to be in the presence of the ruler who defended Avalia so effectively. Answering the officer's earlier question, Ike asserts that he cannot be human since he commands demonic forces. He then questions if she sent someone to execute him. Undeterred, Alistair declares her loyalty as a knight of the kingdom and refuses to reveal anything to the demon, willing to face death if necessary. Ike, however, has another plan and approaches her to read her mind. But suddenly, Lilith arrives distracted and asks what kind of shamelessness this is. Receiving no response, she suggests Ike have some fun with her instead of this boring human. However, Ike ignores Lilith until he finishes what he was doing and turns and leaves, leaving Alistair unsatisfied. Alistair orders him to stop and asks why he came there. But Ike replies that she need not worry because apparently it turns out that she had nothing to do with the attempted execution he suffered. The woman argues that she said nothing, so Ike explains that he read her mind and saw nothing suspicious. Finally, he advises her to focus on what needs to be done after their defeat, as that is the most important thing. With that, he distances himself from the confused woman. Lilith then invites Ike to relax somewhere before heading home, but he declines the offer and enters a portal he just created. Arriving home, Ike presents Sadie with a portion of rice he bought in the capital. She asks why, and he recalls being told to double the city's taxes. Emphasizing Ivalia's fertile soil with wheat as the main crop, Ike suggests cultivating more rice in the city. He explains that more productive food could free up farmers for other roles like joining the army or construction projects, fostering faster city development. To symbolize the beginning of this transformation, Ike asks Sadie to cook the rice he brought. However, she has no idea how to do it, having never seen this food before. Ike doesn't know either but tells her to figure it out, and Sadie asserts she will do her best. Later, Ike finds the army assembled and Jiren wonders why everyone was gathered. He then responds that he will explain soon. Reflecting on the attempt on his life, Ike concludes that the arrow belonged to the enemy army, yet Alistair, the attacker's leader, knew nothing about it. This suggests someone intended to frame the Knights of the White Rose. So to gather information, he reads the minds of his warriors, while Jiren admires Ike's power, eager for him to delve further. Among the troops, a goblin sweats nervously, fearing discovery. At that moment, Ike teleports in front of him and accuses the soldier. That night, the commander visits Sapphiro after a long absence, a fact the woman pointedly comments on. Despite being accustomed to seeing his superior bathing, he prefers to wait outside until she is ready. But before leaving the bathroom, she asks if he found the spy, to which he replies is the second in command of the 7th Battalion, the one-eyed goblin Jace. However, Sapphiro isn't surprised as she already had her suspicions. Ike then adds that Jace is very intelligent and a veteran warrior. But suddenly, Sapphiro rises from the bath and asserts that this traitor must pay a high price. The scene then shifts to the one-eyed creature being informed by his subordinate that the commander visited Sapphiro. Jace asks the shooter if he messed everything up since Ike is still alive, but the archer assures him that he pierced the target's chest. Another comrade soon informs Jace that he cannot contact the Immortal Brigade's spies, so Jace deduces he was discovered and plans to strike first to avoid being caught off guard. However, as if that weren't enough, Jace is informed by a third ally that Ike himself has come to see him. Upon arrival, the goblin comments that the commander made a point of coming alone, and Ike notes that the goblin decided to do the opposite, with dozens of soldiers behind him. Therefore, he wants to know if Jace plans to start a war. However, Jace responds that this is his territory and none of the commander's business. Moreover, he mentions that Ike was injured in the last battle and believes this is due to the commander becoming too confident, which made him careless, an unacceptable behavior for the leader of a brigade. Without losing his calm, Ike agreed with Jace's point of view because indeed, he needed to be more cautious, especially concerning potential traitors. Realizing he had been discovered, Jace smirked and asked what Ike planned to do alone, even though the goblins' one-eyed army was twice the size of the city's military contingent. Moreover, the entire army was eager to taste the blood of the commander. Looking around, Ike was pleased to see all the traitorous soldiers gathered, as it allowed him to kill hundreds of birds with one stone. He soon unleashed a meteor shower that dispersed the troops from the dark sky above. Sapphiro chanted the spell to keep the flames falling from behind the clouds. However, causing devastation in Avalia was not part of the plan, so Ike tried to shield himself while regretting involving the sorceress in his plans again, as the idea was to contain the power to minimize the destruction of structures. Then Sapphiro ordered her skeleton troops to destroy the enemies mercilessly, while Ike appeared directly behind Jace, offering him two options: surrender peacefully now or surrender after losing everything. But Jace chose option C, sending his minions after the mage. Without difficulty, Ike repelled the enemy forces with his vast array of spells, leaving no chance for his opponents to even touch him. As the soldiers advanced toward their target, Jace hid behind a rock, even as his subordinates called for their leader's presence. According to Jace, his servant's job was merely to buy time for his escape. With this in mind, he fled over the city's structures, promising to make Sapphiro pay. A huge creature also tried to stop the goblin with a punch that sank the roof of the house, but Jace had his tricks to avoid capture, like a smoke bomb that allowed him to evade the giant. Once no one was around, he entered a secret passage leading directly outside the city and away from the battle. Confident he had successfully escaped. However, Ike appeared to thwart the goblin's plans once more, nearly hitting him with a fireball. Jace questioned how the commander knew where he was, since only he knew of that path. But Ike explained that his familiar had followed the traitor. Furious, Jace crushed the familiar with his hand and demanded how the mage dared to stand in his way. But Jace, willing to take the confrontation to the bitter end, punched the mage's magical shield while arrogantly announcing his credentials as the vice commander of the 7th Battalion. A mere punch was no match for the sorcerer's magical shield, so Ike counterattacked by binding the traitor. Ironically, Jace remarked that the demon army held Commander Ike in high esteem and that the goblin had always known the mage had immense talent with unmatched sorcery and intelligence. Reflecting on this, Jace proposed that the two commanders take over the Demon Lord's army together since they had spent their lives fighting humans. On the other hand, the Demon Lord had never done anything for them. Following demonic instincts and making humans obey and suffer was what brought the greatest joy. But the current Lord did not allow her troops to kill without a justified reason, and many members of the army were dissatisfied with this. According to Jace, it seemed that Darakutin lacked the firm hand necessary to lead such dark forces and sometimes gave the impression that she didn't even want the position. Thus, they would be doing a favor by defurning the current ruler, which is why Jace wished for the commander to join them. After the speech, Ike refused the proposal without a second thought. Anticipating this, Jace threw a kunai at his superior, but he dodged the blade and froze time, dismissing the goblin's ridiculous escape attempt. Moreover, Jace had mentioned joining them, so Ike asked if anyone else was aiding the goblin, but he refused to speak, so Sapphiro appeared to torture the traitor until he talked. Pulling at his bindings, Ike asked his superior not to interfere as he wanted to use his own methods. However, the sorceress could not tolerate the subordinate's delay in doing what was necessary. With that said, the spy began to show signs of poisoning, prompting Ike to use his antidote spell, but to no avail. This meant Jace had been poisoned by his own comrades, which to Ike was the worst crime possible. Sapphiro then used Jace's companion's hate for him to make the goblin talk, as there was no need to stay silent for those who betrayed him. Besides, she assured him that she would avenge him if he revealed who cooperated in the espionage. Jace gave the name of the responsible party before losing his life. After the entire incident, the commander of the Immortal Brigade was summoned by the Demon Lord along with Sapphiro, who reported that the mastermind behind the plot was the head of the 3rd Battalion, Bastio. However, Darakutin demanded proof, so the sorceress explained that Bastio had dragged Jace to his side and was plotting the deaths of the 3 present in the throne room. After hearing Sapphiro, the ruler asked for the word of a 4th person backslash who appeared in the room, surprising the 7th Battalion commanders. There, Bastio defended himself, arguing that the 2 accusers had killed the vice commander to frame him as they wanted control of the 3rd Battalion. He accused Sapphiro of being a witch, suggesting such deceitful behavior was expected from one. This insult caused Sapphiro to instinctively release her magical power. However, Darakutin calms everyone down, emphasizing that demons inherently seek wealth, glory, and influence, and punishing subordinates for such ambitions would leave no one left. She then questioned Bastio, asking if he thought she wouldn't uncover his plot, which surprised the Headless Knight. As for Sapphiro, the demon lord acknowledged her loyalty but held her responsible for not maintaining her subordinate's loyalty. Thus, both Sapphiro and Bastio were to be punished according to the law. However, Darakutin didn't want to lose both commanders during a war, so she decreed the situation be resolved through a duel, where the winner would be deemed truthful, as this is the demon way. Later, Sapphiro explained to Ike that the duel would be fought with magical creatures known as puppet soldiers. Each commander would control an army of 50 puppets but couldn't participate directly. The commander whose puppets defeated all the enemy's puppets would win, and the loser would be executed. However, I question why such a complicated method was chosen over direct combat, but Sapphiro explained that Darakutin wanted to test their command abilities. The duel's most eccentric aspect was that commanders could choose a substitute to fight for them, which is why Sapphiro chose Ike. Not confident, Ike argued that the commander should ensure victory herself, but Sapphiro insisted that Ike had surpassed her in strength, and that this strategy had the highest probability of success, thus entrusting her life to him. Analyzing his resources for the confrontation, Ike felt immense pressure. However, his loyal companion Jaira noticed his silence and asked if he was okay. He then admitted that he was reflecting on how eccentric their commander was, much like the demon lord. Upon hearing this, Juran laughed and agreed, noting that Ike was also unusual with his habit of asking subordinates not to kill without reason. Nevertheless, Ike was chosen for the fight and had to devise a strategy. But Juran complained about the ugly puppet faces and expressed a desire to know how to make them fight effectively. Ike then soon explained that the puppets follow commands precisely and have equal strength, making it a test of command skill alone. He then went to his office to devise combat strategies but struggled to find anything useful. However, when Sadie brought tea, Ike asked her how she would win a battle. Initially, the maid was unsure, so Ike prompted her with a hypothetical scenario. She then told him that she would use a broom to defend herself but doubted its effectiveness. But to her surprise, Ike agreed, noting that a weapon allowing attacks from a distance was a good choice. Ike explains to Sadie that a sword is longer than a dagger, a spear is longer than a sword, and a bow and arrow provide the longest range of all. He then tells her that distance attacks are always a smart strategy in a fight because they minimize risk, though any worthy opponent will be aware of this. However, she then mentions that her master in Aeron was passionate about crossbows. Ike agrees, noting that crossbows are easier to use than bows and can penetrate armor effectively, but they are still common knowledge, as he needs something that will surprise the enemy. Considering this, Ike contemplates building firearms. Sadie, unfamiliar with the term, asks if they are powerful weapons. He then explains that firearms can hit targets hundreds of miles away without allowing for a counterattack. Impressed, Sadie wonders how he will acquire such powerful items. He then tells her that he plans to consult the 7th Battalion commander, a skilled alchemist whom he believes can help. Upon meeting Sapphiro, she admits there are things she cannot do, contradicting her usual confident demeanor. Ike continues to explain that firearms are iron cylinders filled with gunpowder that explode to propel a projectile. Annoyed by the technical talk, Sapphiro splashes water on Ike's face, inviting him to join her in the water. Meanwhile, Bastio makes his preparations for the duel. Learning that Ike will fight in Sapphiro's place, Bastio's messenger believes she's afraid of him. However, Bastio, recognizing Sapphiro's cunning, knows she must have a plan. Admiring his sword, made from the fangs of a black dragon, Bastio is confident in its power to cut through anything. He plans to equip all his puppets with these swords. Suddenly, Amork arrives, reporting mission success and assuring Bastio of their impending victory. After a long bath, Ike continues to reflect on his situation, unwilling to believe Sapphiro would risk her life on him. However, Darakutin suddenly appears, catching him without his demon armor. Bowing in desperation, Ike hopes she doesn't recognize him as she has never seen him without his mask. Without a word, she orders him to open a cloth bundle, revealing various firearms. Darakutin addresses him by name, asking if these are what he sought. When Ike tries to deny his identity, she reveals that Romberg had already informed her of his knowledge and magic. She then explains that despite great power, allies are essential, and she sees Ike as a valuable addition to her cause. After she leaves, the scene shifts to Ike showing the firearms to Sapphiro, asking her to make lead projectiles. However, Sapphiro conjures a big black ball, but Ike points out that it's too large for the small barrels. Annoyed by the precision required, Sapphiro complains about the impact on her skin. At that moment, a hole is blown in the wall by an explosion, and a demon emerges from the smoke, coughing profusely. It is Fiorentino, one of Ike's servants, who has created gunpowder even though she didn't fully understand it. She doesn't comprehend how sulfur, when mixed with charcoal and saltpeter, could cause an explosion. Ike then explains that this is the concept of gunpowder. Next, Sapphiro constructs appropriate ammunition for the firearm, and Ike asks her to reproduce 500 of these projectiles. However, as this type of work harms her skin, the mage asks Fiorentina to handle it. Jiren offers to help with determination, but Ike and Fiorentina ask the orc to stay out of it. The next day, the duel is about to begin, and the arena is filled with monsters and demons who are eagerly anticipating the bloodshed. Daracuten watches the preparations from her throne, while Bastio laughs at Ike for coming to the war with only shields while his puppets are fully armored. Observing the enemy's equipment, Ike asks if Bastio's puppets are holding Damascus steel, which is confirmed by the enemy. Bastio boasts that Damascus steel is the strongest of all metals, so tough that it cannot be penetrated by arrows or spears, stating that this was a gift from the Demon Lord. Hearing this, Ike looks up to where Daracuten is seated and recalls her saying he would be important by her side in the war trenches. Since he was also given a gift, Ike supposes that she wanted to offer a fair fight with no favorites. At the same time, he suspects the Demon Lord might be testing him by pinning him against such a formidable opponent. The event announcer soon declares the duel to start, and Bastio orders his archers to fire, killing some puppets who didn't shield themselves in time. Next, the commander of the 3rd Battalion orders his spearmen to advance, and more of Ike's puppets fall on the battlefield. Holding only shields, Ike's puppets merely defend against the attacks until they can no longer, being defeated one by one without a chance to retaliate. However, Ike remains silent until a gunshot echoes around the arena. The shot kills one of Bastio's puppets, making the commander realize the situation has changed. Soon, a line of shooters forms in the rear and opens fire on the opponents, driving Bastio mad with confusion over the unfamiliar equipment. Not knowing how to react, the 3rd Battalion leader's puppets are slaughtered until none remain. After the fight, Daracuten approaches the defeated commander and offers him 2 options: to take his own life for an honorable death or to be killed by the Demon Lord herself. But shockingly, Bastio chooses a 3rd option, one worthy of a demon. At that moment, the orc archer who had set the trap alongside Bastio shoots at Daracuten. However, she catches the arrow effortlessly, but it detonates, engulfing everyone nearby in an explosion. Additionally, other explosives around the arena go off, devastating the packed stands, and the 3rd Battalion launches an ambush, while Bastio declares himself the new Demon Lord. Soon, the operation to overtake the demon army begins, and Bastio's traitorous forces are sending the resistance to the Shadow World with arrows and swords. Bastio's command to kill all the resist echoes through the arena as he proclaims that the world belongs to him from this day forth. Ike stands confused, watching as his comrades are slain before his eyes. Although he could have helped, it seems he didn't get along with those who were being eliminated. Bastio then addresses Ike, offering him a chance to join forces, promising control of the 7th Battalion once he takes over the Demon Lord's army. However, Ike scans the battlefield and responds that while the offer is tempting, it is not something he would consider. Perplexed, Bastio asks why, to which Ike replies that Bastio will never achieve his dream of becoming the Demon Lord. At that moment, skeletons and goblins surround Ike, while Bastio orders his men to eliminate Ike, forgetting that Ike is protected by the plot armor. He easily destroys the first wave of the magic spell. Furious, Bastio commands the rest of his soldiers to attack, but Ike summons projectiles that pierce through many of them. One skeleton detaches its head and launches it like a grenade at Ike, but it has no effect. Ike then jumps into the air and continues his assault, instilling fear in Bastio. As Ike prepares to finish Bastio with a powerful blast spell, it seems like the battle is over. However, Bastio's head rolls into view, and he begins to laugh hysterically. Shocked, Ike sees that Bastio has survived, but Bastio soon reveals that an attack like that would never stop him since he and his army are undead. As the leader of the Undying Brigade, Bastio explains that this is something Ike should have considered. It turns out that he is a Dullahan and orders his resurrected men to attack. Although Ike deals with them, they keep coming back, and he realizes he will soon run out of magic. After surviving the same arrow that took out the Demon Lord, Ike acknowledges that he must find another way since darkness magic doesn't work on the undead. But when more enemies attack, Ike releases a new power that erases a portion of the army. Seeing this, Bastio, now worried, realizes he might be in deep trouble. The assassin who took out the Demon Lord also witnesses this and draws his weapon, but his arm is cut off by Sapphiro, who arrives with her army to save the day. Shocked, Bastio hears a voice telling him not to worry about Sapphiro because Ike is his challenger. To his surprise, the Demon Lord appears unharmed and unscathed before dashing towards him and offers one more chance. If he wins the duel against Ike, she promises not to kill him. With renewed enthusiasm, Bastio prepares to face Ike. The two rush towards each other and clash. Ike picks up a barrier, but Bastio's powerful blows slowly chip away at it, calling Ike a weakling. He then finds an opening, jumps into the air, and the two launch long-range assaults at each other. But Ike uses the power from before and disintegrates Bastio's arm, leaving him shocked. Sapphiro, observing this, recognizes it as white magic and notes that the demon lord doesn't seem surprised at all. In a sudden journey to the past, we witness Romberg's heroic rescue of young Ike from ravenous wolves that had claimed the lives of his parents. Romberg, taking pity on the orphan child, chose to rear him as a demon, imparting magical knowledge as Ike matured. Ike's curiosity was piqued by a magic that could revive a dead flower, and upon asking, Romberg explained that only white magic held such power. However, demons typically struggle with white magic due to their lack of a compassionate heart, which is essential for wielding it. He then cautioned Ike that white magic could be terrifying to those with demonic abilities, so if Ike were to master it, he must conceal this skill from others. With this understanding, Romberg proceeded to teach Ike white magic. Fast forward to the present, Bastia recklessly lunges at Ike, only to be repelled and schooled in ethics. Ike then denounces Bastio's ambition to become the demon lord, highlighting Bastio's willingness to betray his own power. Meanwhile, Ike, who aspires to a just world, cannot condone Bastio's behavior. In the heat of battle, Ike reluctantly resorts to white magic, leading to Bastio's complete annihilation. But Sapphiro, witnessing the event, asks if Romberg taught Ike the spell, which he affirms. Sapphiro also reveals her foresight of these events, explaining her earlier refusal to the duel. With Bastio gone, the third corps is leaderless, so the demon lord emerges, suggesting Ike fill the vacancy, but allows him time to deliberate. Later, within the demon castle, Sapphiro vents her displeasure at the demon lord's potential claim on Ike. When Ike arrives, he declines the leadership offer, preferring to remain with Sapphiro to continue learning. Since assuming control of Avalia, Ike has observed a harmonious coexistence between demons and humans, aligning with his vision of unity. He then unveils his human identity to the demon lord, who admits to already knowing. After the discussion, Ike and Sapphiro depart, with Sapphiro confused by Ike's disclosure and the demon lord's lack of surprise, all under the watchful gaze of the demon lord from her grand window. The scene shifts to Ike, who is observing Avalia's. But suddenly, Sadie approaches and asks him what he's doing there. Ike then explains that he's been researching a new farming method suitable for the area's soil and climate, mentioning it's a system that allows crops to be grown continuously without resting the fields. Initially, Sadie is puzzled by this explanation, so Ike simplifies it by saying she can eat all the turnips she wants. Excited by this, Sadie listens as Ike reveals that soon they'll be building a town where humans and demons can live peacefully together. The scene then cuts to the human army achieving a decisive victory against the demons, who are attempting to capture another town. Following this, Ike uses his magic to make it rain over the fields and explains that traditionally, they grow wheat and let fields rest before planting grass for livestock. This requires fields to be fallow for extended periods. But instead of this, they will now rotate barley, clover, wheat, and turnips, eliminating the need to leave fields unused. The confused Sadie asks if they can eat clovers too, but Ike clarifies that clovers are for livestock. Ike then reassures everyone that if this works, neither humans nor demons will go hungry, and everyone is thrilled to hear this. That afternoon, Ike is busy studying, but suddenly Sadie serves him tea and congratulates him on his promotion to vice commander. However, he simply explained that he only got lucky as there was an opening for the role. Just then, our favorite emergency food bursts into the room. This causes Ike to question the pig, and Sadie reminds the piglet to address Ike as vice commander. The piglet, remembering Ike's recent promotion, apologizes for his rudeness and begs for punishment. But Ike, however, urges him to share the urgent news. Initially, Jerem struggles to remember and is prompted by Ike about the Alliance of Kings. Recollecting this, Jaren reports that the Alliance's army began moving last night and that the Second Corps, known for its bloodthirsty yet skilled warriors, was defeated while trying to take over Aresta. This loss was unexpected, so Ike deduces that the mobilization of the Alliance of Kings has affected them. Sadie, still confused, asks about the Alliance, and Ike explains it's one of humanity's oldest treaties, uniting the continent's nations against the demon army when it grows too strong. But Jaren then asks about previous Alliance armies, and Ike confirms it has happened 3 times, each resulting in the demons' defeat. This made Jaren worry about their safety, and Ike speculated that Avalia's will likely be the Alliance's next target. He explains that after capturing Arsenum, the humans will need to attack Avalia's to reclaim it, concentrating their forces. Although demons might overpower humans in one-on-one battles, they struggle against the humans' numbers and coordination. If Avalia's falls, the demons will have to retreat to Doverberg, jeopardizing Ike's dream of a harmonious town for humans and demons. However, he believes guns are the key to overcoming the humans' numerical advantage. The scene shifts to Fiorentina, discussing with Ike and Sapphiro the challenges of mass-producing guns using alchemy. But Sapphiro questions the necessity of guns, suggesting they could simply use magic to defeat humans. However, Ike points out that magic would cause widespread destruction, making rebuilding difficult. They need weapons anyone can wield against the Alliance. Fiorentina acknowledges the difficulty but proposes manufacturing parts separately for assembly. But Sapphiro wonders how to create such small components, and Fiorentina suggests seeking help from the dwarves. Although Sapphiro agrees, she notes that the dwarves were defeated by humans and are now a wandering tribe. They'll need many dwarves for weapon production, and Sapphiro asks how they'll gather them. Fiorentina has no answer. Ike suggests rescuing the dwarf king held captive in the Ifmis kingdom. The scene then reveals the dwarf king in his cell, reminiscing about their defeat by humans. The humans insisted the dwarves could have avoided this outcome by cooperating. However, the king had refused to let their technology be used for war. The humans then took his son hostage, coercing the dwarves into using their skills for the Ifmis kingdom. With no choice, the dwarves complied, eventually scattering across the land. The king hopes his people are safe, and he notices the guards outside his cell have fallen asleep. At that moment, Lilith arrives and unlocks his cell. But the king is surprised to see a demon and wonders what she wants. However, Lilith urges Gunther to follow her, but his endless questions begin to annoy her. Frustrated, she puts him to sleep, just as she had with the soldiers. As Jurin arrives, he asks Lilith what she did to the king, but she responds that she simply got tired of his incessant questioning and suggests they move him. Jurin then carries Gunther, and they head out, relieved not to encounter any guards. However, Jurin soon reminds her that they were instructed to avoid being seen carrying the king and tells her to be quiet and keep moving. Lilith then takes offense at his tone and saying that he smells bad today. His comment angers Jurin, and their commotion draws the attention of the guards. Being a succubus, Lilith drains the guards' vitality, rendering them incapacitated, and Jurin reminds her that Ike instructed them to avoid fights whenever possible. But Lilith ignores him, prompting Jurin to threaten to inform Ike about her actions. Another guard attempts to attack Jurin, but to everyone's surprise, Jurin manages to take him out. Realizing he has disobeyed Ike's orders himself, Piggy begs Lilith not to report his actions to Ike. Together, they escape the dungeon but soon find themselves surrounded by soldiers. Feeling cornered, our Piggy urges Lilith to act, so she begins to absorb the soldiers' vitality without killing them. From far away, Ike observes the commotion, frustrated that his instructions to avoid attracting attention were not followed. Meanwhile, Lilith and Piggy are fleeing from the soldiers, with Lilith unable to absorb any more vitality. Jurin wonders why there are so many soldiers around, suspecting that the Alliance should have drawn most of them away. But suddenly, Ike intervenes using his magic to block the soldiers' pursuit. He then asks his subordinates if they encountered any issues. Jurin reports that everything went smoothly and informs Ike they have the king. Ike is surprised to see how roughly they treat the king and scolds Jurin, reminding him they need to handle the king gently. The scene shifts to the king of the dwarves, Gunther, waking up in a house in Avalias. He sees Ike beside him and asks why he has been free from his cell. Ike shows him a gun and asks if he can make more of them. Gunther examines the firearm, acknowledging its complexity, but declares he has no intention of working for the demons. He assumes Ike intends to use him like the humans have and vows never to become Ike's slave. But Ike acknowledges Gunther's perspective and explains that his intentions are to establish peace between humans and demons, confusing Gunther. He then invites Gunther to follow him and shows him a city where humans and demons coexist, where Ike explains that he envisions a future where humans and demons live together in peace, which is why he seeks Gunther's help. The king finds the idea intriguing but hesitates, recalling how humans have used and destroyed the dwarves' homeland. Initially, he refuses to help Ike if it means aiding humans. But Ike once again asks if Gunther would reconsider if peace could be restored. In exchange for mass-producing firearms, Ike promises to persuade the demon lord to rebuild the dwarf kingdom. However, Gunther thinks Ike is mocking him and retorts that rebuilding a nation without its people is futile. But Ike assures him it is no joke and takes Gunther to a smithy where many dwarves are working on creating guns. There, Gunther is astonished to see the dwarves and reunites with his son, who explains that the demons brought them here, provided them a place to live, and reunited them. The dwarves express their gratitude to Ike for keeping his promise and vow to demonstrate their capabilities. Ike then asks Gunther again if he will assist with his ambition, and this time Gunther agrees. Later, Ike returns to his study and Sadie offers to prepare tea for him. But Ike suggests she rests. Sadie declines, saying that keeping busy distracts her. He then suggests she read some books, and Sadie admits she cannot read, so Ike offers to teach her when he has free time. As they share this moment, Lilith barges in, questioning if Sadie is trying to seduce Ike again. But the maid calmly replies she is merely assisting her master, and the two butt heads over this. As he tries to calm them down, Peppa Pig rushes into the room again, announcing trouble. Turns out, outside of Valias, the army of the allied nations has gathered. A soldier informs the army's general that the dwarf king was freed by humans. The general dismisses this, believing the old king would be of no use to the demons. Soon, another soldier arrives and the general asks how many forces are in Avalias. The soldier reports there are currently 500, but more brigade commanders are on their way to support them. He then learns that they have a total of 12,000 men and is confident they will not lose the battle. We then see Ike and a dwarf perched at the top of a cliff, watching as Jiren struggles to make his way up, huffing and puffing. Although Ike could have easily used his levitation magic to assist Jiren, he thought it would be good for him to get some exercise. When Jiren finally reaches the top, he's exhausted and asks how much further they have to go. Fortunately, they've already arrived at their destination. The dwarf soon reassures him, pointing out that their goal is close enough to see from there. He then guides Ike and Jiren to a cave filled with natural niter, perfect for making gunpowder. Meanwhile, back in town, the dwarves are hard at work crafting guns for Ike's army, having already produced quite a few. To test them, Jiren calls over some goblins, instructing them to fire at targets. As they shoot, the wooden planks become riddled with holes. Pleased with the outcome, Jiren orders the goblins to keep practicing with the guns. The troops are gathering in town, and the troop leaders meet with Ike and Sapphiro to discuss their war plans. The ogre questions Ike about how he managed to rebuild the city wall so quickly, which should have taken twice as long. But Ike explains that he had humans working alongside demons to speed up the process, paying the humans a fair wage to motivate them more than if they had been forced to work. Suddenly, the gargoyle leader crashes through the roof with a dramatic entrance, complaining that the room is too small for him as it's designed for humans, not 10-foot-tall demons like him. It's been a while since he's seen Ike, and he greets him with the new title of Vice Commander, although Ike is indifferent to formalities and says it's unnecessary. With everyone gathered, Sapphiro begins the meeting, announcing that Ike is now in full command of all war operations. All troop leaders are required to follow his orders as he's their direct superior, and every leader nods, ready to follow Ike's lead without question. However, the real challenge is devising a strategy as the numbers are daunting. He revealed that they have only 2,000 soldiers, while the enemy has a formidable 12,000. Hearing this, the wolf captain is optimistic, thinking that with her 6-to-1 odds, victory is within reach. But Ike knows better. He points out that even if his wolf army is ready for the challenge, many demons in their ranks might struggle against such odds. The ogre then suggests a daring plan, a night raid to catch the enemy off guard. But Ike quickly dismisses this idea, aware that the enemy has mages capable of detection spells that could ruin a surprise attack. Instead, Ike decides to confront the enemy on his own terms, allowing the human army to make the first move. Their large numbers suggest they're overconfident, and Ike wants to strip them of that arrogance, aiming to end the battle swiftly with minimal casualties on both sides. After the meeting, Sadie is busy cleaning up the mess from the roof's hole, with Jiren helping. Ike, meanwhile, is studying a map, contemplating the upcoming battle. Sadie comments on how lively the city has become, surprising Ike with her calm demeanor despite the impending war. Sadie reassures him that she's not frightened because she trusts everyone in the city to defend Avalias with all their might. Though Sadie won't be on the front lines, she's contributing by preparing meals for the soldiers. She's concerned about managing meals for such a large group, as her experience is mainly with cooking soup in bulk. She asks Ike for suggestions. Ike starts searching through his recipe books, but Sadie insists it's unnecessary. Ike explains that what the soldiers eat can impact their morale, so he wants to ensure they have the best meals possible. He's relieved there's no food shortage, as that would have weakened the army. While flipping through the recipe book, Ike asks if they have rice. But once Sadie confirms, Ike suggests making fried rice. Excited by the idea, Sadie heads to the kitchen, showing her impressive cooking skills as she quickly prepares the dish. Sadie then serves a portion to Ike, and they both agree it's excellent. As they prepare to enjoy the fried rice, Jiren interrupts, envious of the food and wanting to join. Ike, amused, offers him a plate, which he eagerly accepts. Just as they're about to eat, Lilith bursts in, also envious of the meal and wanting to join. Both Lilith and Jiren are amazed by the flavor, especially Lilith, who asks Sadie for seconds. Sadie piles the rice a bit too high, leading Lilith to joke about being fattened up. This sparks a playful stare down between the two, and Ike wishes they could enjoy the meal without a squabble. With the meal momentarily forgotten, Ike returns to planning for the Alliance's invasion. He reflects on their progress, noting that the city walls are repaired, a formidable army is assembled, and all troops are equipped with guns to ensure success. Suddenly, an ogre station as a lookout spots the Alliance's army approaching and quickly sounds the alarm. Hearing this, Jiren rushes to inform Ike that the time has come for the army to engage. Ike then addresses the assembled soldiers, emphasizing that if the Alliance breaches their defenses, they will proceed to attack Arsenal, which would be catastrophic for the demon forces. Therefore, he stresses the importance of protecting Ivalias at all costs. Meanwhile, the human army's commander is disappointed, noting that the demons are far fewer in number than he had anticipated. All the effort he put into assembling the best soldiers from across the country now seems excessive. He wonders if his massive force might be overkill and dismisses the situation as less of a war and more of an extermination. He then shifts his focus to his next goal and orders his troops to advance with relentless determination, commanding them to ensure that every single demon is eradicated. As the human army advances and begins using heavy artillery, Ike casts a barrier to shield the castle from the barrage of projectiles. Despite Ike's efforts, the human commander remains relentless and orders another round of heavy fire. The enemy troops keep up the assault, trying to overwhelm Ike's barrier. But Ike remains steadfast, showing no signs of exhaustion, and his soldiers rally around him, their cheers echoing across the battlefield. Although Ike expected this kind of attack, he focuses on anticipating the enemy's next move. The human commander sees Ike's barrier holding up against their attacks and, not wanting to be defeated, orders his troops to launch another barrage. Lilith and Jiran watch with disbelief and amusement at the futile attempts to break through Ike's defenses, mocking the human army's repetitive assault on the barrier. However, this time the humans have a trick up their sleeve, deploying their magicians to disrupt Ike's barrier, causing it to become unstable and allowing the rocks to hit their target. With the barrier finally giving way, the human commander seizes the moment and commands his first squad to charge. Just as the soldiers advance toward the walls, they are stopped in their tracks by a Titan's sudden appearance from behind the walls. The Titan starts launching enormous rocks at the advancing soldiers, crushing several under the massive boulders. Then Ike's soldiers start firing arrows to back up the Titan's assault, so human soldiers use their shields for defense and realize they can fight back. Before the Titan can throw another boulder at them, they aim and shoot the Titan multiple times in his chest, eventually bringing it down. With the Titan out of the picture, the human forces turn their attention back to the walls, so Jiren and the others scramble for cover as the arrows continue to rain down. Ike then puts up another barrier to shield his soldiers from the incoming arrows, but the human soldiers manage to get close enough to start hooking ladders onto the walls and climbing. However, Ike's soldiers will not let them climb up easily, so they start firing arrows and throwing rocks to push back the invaders. Despite their efforts, a human army's numerical advantage means that if they keep climbing, it's only a matter of time before some make it to the top, but it's not going to be any of these unfortunate soldiers. As the battle continues, the human vice commander remarks on how much tougher the demons are proving to be than he anticipated. He's confident that with enough sustained assault, they'll eventually break through. But as he surveys the scene of his men dying, his thoughts seem to drift away from the battlefield, and he thinks about what's for dinner later. Eager to wrap things up quickly so he can relax and enjoy his meal, he orders another catapult attack on the wall, even though it means sending many of his own men to their deaths. The vice commander protests, concerned about their troops' safety, but the human commander dismisses his worries because he doesn't care about them and orders the catapults to fire. Ike spots the incoming projectiles and attempts to shield the castle with another barrier. Unfortunately, the barrier gets disrupted again, and Ike shouts for everyone to brace themselves. The barrage slams into the walls with devastating force, causing severe damage to the structure and resulting in heavy casualties on both sides of the humans and demons. Amidst the chaos, our favorite food manages to stay safe, while Lilith is disgusted by the commander's disregard for his own men's lives just to breach the defenses. Ike too feels a mix of sorrow and anger at such reckless disregard for life, but the commander, with a smug smile, seems to relish the destruction he's causing. Then, without hesitation, he orders the second squad of soldiers to advance through the newly created breach in the wall. With this, Ike's remaining forces prepare to defend their position, and the battle rages fiercely, with both sides fighting desperately. Ike noticed that things were moving faster than expected, so he needed to stay vigilant to ensure everything went according to plan. The monsters that could be rescued in time were brought to the makeshift first aid unit, where Sadie struggled to maintain her focus and, more importantly, keep the few remaining combatants alive on the front line. Meanwhile, Lily and the other demons fought off the enemy soldiers, who were swarming like ants over the breach in the wall. After defeating yet another opponent, Lily saw the third unit arriving, their strength intact. Fiorentina took the rear, ordering her troops to prevent the enemy from advancing, while Jerome positioned himself with the goblins armed with firearms, terrified of hitting his allies amid the chaotic battle. Suddenly, the werewolves charged into the vanguard, using their claws and teeth to make significant advances for Ivalia's forces. They were reinforced by ferocious, powerful monsters to contain the threat, while the goblins with rifles fired from the top of the wall, surprising the enemy soldiers who had never seen such weapons before. Faced with this onslaught, the third unit of the Alliance had no choice but to retreat as the werewolves skillfully subdued their opponents, giving them no chance to fight back. Amid the fleeing men, the wolves heard a trumpet from Ivalia's. On the day of the War Council, Ike had emphasized that this battle needed to be swift, clean, and with minimal casualties. The monsters agreed, though they couldn't imagine how this could be achieved given their apparent disadvantage. Without going into detail, the mage simply instructed them to fight with all their might. Bio, the leader of the werewolves, saw this as mockery from the vice commander of the 7th Battalion, but Fiorentina urged him to listen to what the commander had to say, certain that there was a reason behind his words. Indeed, Ike explained that there was a way to achieve their goal. In the midst of the human alliance's attack, the demon invoked an alchemy skill called Devil's Thorns, a tangle of thorns that, when thrown on the ground, spread to close the breach in the wall. During the meeting, Ike had asked how long Bio could fight at full strength, and the leader of the werewolf brigade estimated about an hour, though most of his unit would likely be eliminated well before that. Ike then negotiated for Bio to fight for just 10 minutes, no matter what, and then retreat. Bio confidently agreed to this. After launching Devil's Thorns, Fiorentina smiled, seeing the strategy working. Once the wolves retreated, it was the troll's turn to break through the human alliance's forces. The demon grumbled that she had worked to close the wall, only for these brutes to destroy it again. She also recalled Ike saying that part of the plan involved their allies not following the plan, but she wasn't exactly sure what that meant, so she decided to trust the leader and go with the flow. Meanwhile, the troll's chief commanded his unit to massacre the humans without mercy, which they did, as the difference in strength between the races was enormous, giving the impression that not a single troll would fall in this clash. Days earlier, Ike had stipulated that once Bio retreated, Gamos would step in with his giant warriors. Bio felt insulted, thinking the sorcerer didn't trust the Lupines to continue fighting, but Gamos urged silence, beginning to understand the commander's intent. Ike wanted his allies to fight in shifts just as they did when repairing the gates. Bio asked for an explanation, and the sorcerer emphasized that prolonged fighting leads to exhaustion. Therefore, the plan was to attack in shifts, confusing and wearing down the enemy, while Ivalia's forces conserved their energy to maintain full strength. Implementing the established strategy, the forces awaited the next step. A man climbed the wall and was about to kill Fiorentina, but she was saved by Jiren and his rifle. On that pre-war day, though Bio understood the strategy, he doubted its effectiveness because of the humans' overwhelming numerical superiority. But that was precisely why Ike had ordered Fiorentina's alchemy and Jiren's riflemen to be prepared. As strategic units capable of turning the tide of battle, they needed to focus their attacks on a single point on the battlefield. In fact, the breach in the wall was deliberately left open to lure the enemy to that location. Speaking of which, the commander asked if the alchemist was ready for war, and she responded that her orders came from Sapphiro and that she was willing to sacrifice her life to carry them out. However, the mage asked her not to sacrifice her life, just as he asked everyone present to avoid needless sacrifices. The goal of the strategy was to minimize casualties and keep as many combatants alive as possible. Amid the battle, after seeing the wall being rebuilt, the humans prepared their catapults and ballistas to open another breach, but the gargoyles sprang into action, hurling stones from the sky to destroy the weapons from a distance. Curious about his role in the battle, the leader of these monsters had heard that his responsibility was to destroy the enemy's siege weapons. Ike had calculated that the humans would have thousands of soldiers available, not counting reserve forces. Their general, coming from a long line of nobles, was a coward who cared more about his well-being than his army. In other words, if he felt the tide of war turning against him, this general would act rashly, and it was then that the monsters needed to capture him. Ike made it clear that he would personally handle this matter, so he asked that no one take independent action in this regard. With that said, all the leaders present embraced the idea of the Immortal Brigade commander and felt confident that their defense would succeed. Once the plan was put into action, it truly seemed to turn the tide for the monsters in this war. The desperate looks that had gripped Ivalia's forces were now replaced with sparks of hope as Ike's strategy began to take effect. Fiorentina hoped that Sapphiro was safe amidst the chaos as the meeting was drawing to a close. She wanted to inquire about the commander's status as well. The deputy informed her that the commander had been assigned another mission, likely the most crucial one of all, taking on the human rear guard. Already in action on the day of the battle, Sapphiro had spotted the leader of the human soldiers and could almost taste victory. Meanwhile, the front line had descended into chaos for the human alliance. Their soldiers were being crushed by the overwhelming brute force of the monster races, a far cry from the reality the general had promised his men before the conflict. At this point, the general received word that Units 2 and 3 had been decimated by the enemy. The smug smile vanished from his face, replaced by anger and surprise at Ivalia's unexpected resilience. The deputy advised a retreat, but the general demanded an all-out attack. He declared that if they couldn't win the 5-1 odds, they should make it 10-1, and if that wasn't enough, each monster should face 20 men at once. The noble general was more concerned about his prestige than the lives of his soldiers and vowed to personally lead the charge to boost morale. With the general's orders, the soldiers prepared for a full-scale assault. Their battle cries echoed off the walls of Avalius, reaching the ears of the defending monsters. Gyron wondered if the humans weren't afraid of what was happening, while Fiorentina thought them foolish, believing their end was near. Then, as if her thoughts had cursed them, the very ground of the battlefield split open, separating Avalius from the Alliance's forces. The units in combat were stunned, wondering how the sorcerers could have allowed this to happen. But the truth was that the goblins had subdued the mages to create this chasm. Amidst the incessant tremors, the human general was thrown from his course, which fled, leaving him stranded on foot. Nearby, Ike was enraged, knowing that some of his men had died just to locate this cowardly Alliance officer. The commander of the 7th Battalion declared that the war would end if the general died, as his soldiers wouldn't care about the battle without their leader. Even so, Ike promised to spare the general's life if he agreed to retreat. The human leader struggled to his feet and questioned who would order the retreat if he died. At that moment, Gunther appeared, shouting that the only option was to defeat the spoiled noble in golden armor without any further talk. The king of the dwarves swung his axe at the human, who coughed up blood from the gaping wound in his torso. Gunther seized the moment to ask if the human knew who he was, but just as he was about to deliver the final blow, Ike used his magic to chain the enraged dwarf. Blinded by fury, Gunther strained against the magical chains, nearly breaking them, until the general finally surrendered and promised to retreat his troops. Soon the human soldiers were seen fleeing across the horizon of Avalius. Although Gunther was certain they would return, he felt grateful to Ike, but was convinced that the commander would regret sparing the enemy general. Ike disagreed, confident that by the time they returned, Avalius would be much stronger. With the enemy alliance in retreat, the monsters celebrated their victory alongside the humans of the city, who were all amazed at having withstood a force 10 times larger than their own. Gyron, crying with relief, ran to embrace his chief, leaving Lilith feeling jealous and ready to pull the orc off the commander. Finally, Sadie joined in the celebrations, struggling to stay close to Ike. Nearby, the monster leaders gathered, realizing why Sapphira had appointed Ike as her deputy for this command. Bea was so impressed that he commented Ike couldn't have won this war alone, but Fiorentina was quick to emphasize that her chief had always said this strategy could only succeed because he had companions he could trust. Moreover, the mage had declared before the battle that this conflict was over before it even began. However, there was still one piece on the board out of formation. Sapphira, surrounded by the rear guard with their spears pointed at her, was released by the human officer. He approached the sorcerers slowly on his course, stopping at an uncomfortable distance from an enemy who had clearly bested many men alone. Nevertheless, hearing the retreat shouts from the front line, he let out a brief sigh. Sapphira remarked that he was lucky to escape with his life. He confirmed he would see the mage again and withdrew with his men. After surveying the now enemy-free surroundings of Avalius, Sapphira contemplated the sunrise, noting that at this rate, Ike would soon be favored in the eyes of Derekun. Atop the city's wall, the commander of the Immortal Brigade briefly removed his mask, letting his human face breathe, taking advantage of a moment of solitude. Battle, Ike meets with Sapphira, who once again praises him for his victory. Humble as always, the mage credits the success to the entire 7th Corps. Sapphira then outlines his next mission, which involves traveling to Zenobia. She anticipates that the humans may soon launch a full-scale attack on the demon army, especially after Ike's defeat of the Alliance of Kings. Ike quickly identifies their current issue, a shortage of supplies. Sapphira isn't surprised by how swiftly he figured this out and expresses her admiration for the increased crop production in his town, Avalius. However, she acknowledges that it's still insufficient to sustain the entire army. The growing intensity of the war has heightened the demand for food. She then tasks Ike with representing her in negotiations with the Federation to establish a trade treaty with the demons. Ike is initially taken aback, thinking she's given him an impossible task, as he doubts that humans would be willing to negotiate with demons amidst their ongoing conflict. Sapphira reassures him, stating that she will handle the city's rebuilding when he tries to use that as an excuse to avoid the mission. Later, Lilith and Gyron hear about Ike's upcoming journey and visit his office to confirm the news. They both plead to accompany him, but he refuses, instead assigning Lilith to oversee the city's security and Gyron to manage the city's affairs. Both are unhappy with these responsibilities, preferring to be at Ike's side during his long mission. Nonetheless, Ike departs with Sadie, who feels bad for Lilith and Gyron. However, unbeknownst to her, they have discovered that she left with Ike, and they are furious. Ike senses their hostility, causing him to shudder slightly, but he quickly moves on to explain to Sadie that Zenobia isn't a country, but a trading city in the south. It's part of the Trade Federation, an alliance of cities with strong economies. Zenobia is known for its unique southern crops and spices. As they arrive, they overlook the sprawling city. knowing that Ike's negotiation skills will be crucial to the Demon Lord's army's future. Their attention is suddenly drawn to a commotion nearby, where the Redbeard pirates are attacking a carriage. Julia's guards are quickly overwhelmed as a large man carves his way through them. He opens the carriage door and is stunned by Julia's beauty. Julia herself is surprised when her attackers are suddenly defeated. Ike appears, checking on her well-being, and is struck by how much she resembles Sadie. The guards are astonished at how easily the Redbeard pirates were defeated. Ike heals the injured escorts as the remaining pirates dangle, having been taken out during the skirmish. During this time, Julia has already fallen in love with Ike at first sight. She thanks Ike for saving her and introduces herself as the daughter of Zenobia's leader, shocking the mage. Unbeknownst to them, one pirate hides in the bushes, eavesdropping on their conversation before slipping away after learning their identities. Julia invites Ike and Sadie to join her in her carriage for the rest of the journey. She thanks them again as Ike and Sadie introduce themselves, though Ike uses a fake name to conceal his identity. Julia reveals that she was returning from visiting a powerful suitor who wanted to marry her, but she rejected him because he was unattractive. She blushes, expressing her happiness that she made that choice. Upon arriving in Zenobia, Julia takes them directly to her mother, Eltria, the city's leader. Eltria, having already heard of Ike's heroic deed, continues her work while meeting with them, as she is very busy. Ike is impressed by Eltria, who has earned her leadership roles through sheer talent. Eltria then asks her daughter to leave so she can have a private discussion with Ike. Once alone, Ike is left speechless when Eltria bluntly asks what a member of the Demon Lord's army is doing in Zenobia. She reached this conclusion because no mage by the name Ike provided exists in the place he claimed, and her guards reported the powerful magic he had used during the fight. Given the ongoing war and Ike's attempts to conceal his identity, Eltria quickly deduces who he really is. Realizing the situation, Ike decides to come clean, properly introducing himself. Eltria initially suspects that he has allied himself with the demons, but Ike explains that he was raised by the renowned demon Romberg. Eltria is taken aback when Ike reveals that the demons wish to establish a trade treaty with Zenobia. She hesitates, knowing that the demons have historically sought to destroy humanity, making any dealings with them a considerable risk. Ike reassures her that while that may have been true in the past, he is fighting to create a future where humans and demons can coexist. Eltria concedes that the current Demon King is different from the others, but she still finds it difficult to trust demons and rejects the proposal. In an effort to change her mind, Ike offers to eliminate the Federation's trouble with the Redbeard pirates in exchange for the trade deal. Eltria acknowledges that the pirates have caused damage equivalent to the annual budget of an entire city, threatening her position as a leader if the issue isn't resolved. She agrees to consider the trade deal if Ike can rid them of the pirates, but adds a second condition: he must marry Julia. Eltria believes that Ike is intelligent and loyal, qualities that she anticipates will make him a leader in the Demon Lord's army one day. She sees the marriage as a way to build a strong alliance, confident in her intuition, which she trusts implicitly. Their discussion is abruptly interrupted by news that the Redbeard pirates are attacking the port. A ruthless pirate gives orders to seize the food and load the women onto their ship. The city's men are cut down as they try to resist, and the guards instruct everyone to flee into the town. The pirates fire cannons into the city, causing widespread destruction. Captain Carosa makes it clear that the city left him no choice. Meanwhile, Ike accepts Eltria's conditions and rushes to the port, but the pirates have already fled. He and his companions help a guard out of the rubble, who explains the situation and warns that Carosa is a mage. Ike realizes that they need to prepare a counterattack for the pirates' next raid, requiring men and weapons to succeed. As he begins to strategize, Sadie tells him that she plans to prepare a meal. She heads to the kitchen, where the cook warns her that it's improper for a guest to assist in such work. Julia then pulls Ike aside to express her excitement about their engagement and confesses that she fell in love with him at first sight. Ike is taken aback by her admission, and his subdued reaction leads Julia to believe that he doesn't feel the same way, leaving her upset. Sadie, observing the interaction, is amazed by how openly the noblewoman expresses her feelings. However, she also harbors feelings for Ike and feels conflicted at the thought of him getting married. Overwhelmed, the maid runs off, and Ike notices someone spying on them. Sadie goes to the market to buy ingredients, hoping to cheer Ike up and remind herself of her role as his servant and nothing more. Meanwhile, one of the pirates mistakes Sadie for Julia and kidnaps her. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself surrounded by criminals. Her captor reveals that he intends to present her as a gift to Carosa, hoping it will earn him a promotion to vice captain. Sadie sees an opportunity to escape and makes a run for it, only to discover that she's already on the pirate's ship far out at sea. Realizing there's no way to escape, she falls to her knees in despair. As the scene unfolds, Carosa's attention sharpens when he sees the newcomer. He asks if she is their latest captive, only for one of his subordinates to excitedly burst in, announcing that she is the daughter of Zenobia's leader. Kurosa takes a closer look and quickly realizes that they have the wrong person. However, he dismisses the mistake as he had been considering getting a maid anyway. Meanwhile, Ike hurries to Eltria's office upon hearing that his maid has been taken. He immediately volunteers to search for her, and as Eltria gets briefed on the situation, she provides Ike with a ship and a crew to aid in the rescue. As he sets off, Ike reflects on all the good times he shared with Sadie and vows to save her. During this time, Kurosa has Sadie tied up and forces her into a more revealing maid outfit. Embarrassed and fearful, Sadie listens as Kurosa tells her that her job is now to make him happy. She recalls the moment when Ike first enlisted her services, promising to protect her in exchange for her cooking and cleaning. With that memory in mind, she offers to cook for her captor, and he agrees. Sadie is escorted to the kitchen, guarded by 2 pirates. As she prepares the meal, she hatches a plan. She pleads for some strong liquor to use as seasoning, and once she has it, she deliberately adds it to a hot pan, causing a fire. One of the guards rushes to extinguish the flames, but Sadie spills the rest of the drink on him, causing the fire to engulf him. She seizes the opportunity to slip away, leaving the other guard to try to save his comrade. Running down the corridor, Sadie hides between some crates. She checks the contents of the boxes and discovers they contain stolen goods from the town. Determined to signal Ike, she decides to set the ship on fire, confident that he is searching for her. Not long after, Kurosa, who has been preoccupied with lustful thoughts, is jolted back to reality when he learns that his ship is on the verge of burning down. Sadie hides in a barrel, watching the chaos she's caused, hoping that Ike will see her handiwork. Unfortunately, she is eventually found and captured again. In a desperate attempt to escape, Kurosa uses his magic to restrain her as one of his men raises an axe to take off one of her legs as punishment for her actions. Just as the axe is about to strike, the man is blasted into the air. Kurosa demands to know who has interfered, and Sadie's eyes light up as Ike steps forward, reaffirming his vow to protect her and warning the pirates that they will pay for what they have done. Sadie quickly makes her way to Ike's side as Kurosa orders his men to eliminate him. However, Ike summons lightning that obliterates the attackers before they can strike. Grateful for the rescue, Sadie checks to ensure she's uninjured, and Ike assures her that a master would never abandon his maid. He tells her that as soon as he saw the burning ship, he knew she trusted him to come and save her. Their moment is interrupted by Kurosa, who acknowledges Ike's exceptional skills as a mage but insists that Sadie was kidnapped fair and square, so she belongs to him now. Kurosa then unleashes a powerful water spell, forcing Ike to grab Sadie and attempt to flee. However, they can't outrun the spell, and Ike is forced to block it, tearing a hole through the ship in the process. Ike and Sadie jump inside the ship to hide, but Kurosa believes it's a futile effort since there's nowhere to escape in the middle of the ocean. Kurosa fires another blast at Ike, and it seems like a direct hit. However, when Kurosa goes to check for Ike's body in the water, he's stunned to see Ike rise with a water spell of his own. Ike tells Kurosa that his days as a pirate are over, and in the next moment he blasts Kurosa and his entire ship to smithereens. The explosion is visible from the ship Ike arrived on, and Kurosa soon plummets from the sky, knocked unconscious by Ike's powerful attack. The crew is left in shock upon realizing that Kurosa has been truly defeated. Once Kurosa and the surviving members of his crew are rounded up and restrained, Ike turns to Sadie and tells her that she is the key reason they were able to succeed. He explains that if she hadn't created that fire signal, he would have never been able to locate the ship and defeat Kurosa. Back in town, Eltria is surprised when she receives news that Ike has not only defeated Kurosa, but also captured him alive. She finds it curious that a member of the demon army would be so reluctant to kill, but she doesn't question it. Ike has fulfilled his end of the bargain by stopping Kurosa, so she agrees to honor their deal and grant Ike the trade treaty he sought. However, she decides to keep the treaty a secret, as she prefers not to provoke the alliance of kings at the moment. Ike is fine with the treaty being kept under wraps as long as it allows him to supply the demon army with the necessary resources. With that settled, Eltria and Ike begin to discuss the specific terms of the treaty. Meanwhile, the demon army, currently engaged in an invasion, is facing numerous setbacks. Sapphiro has been wounded, and while being healed, inquires about their food situation. They have barely 3 days' worth of rations left, and the city's supplies are almost entirely depleted. With the troops hungry and morale low, Sapphiro suspects that the enemy may have lured them into a trap to keep them trapped in the city until they starve to death. Given the dire situation, Sapphiro decides to launch an all-out offensive, despite being advised against it due to her injuries. However, they have few options left as they can afford to wait until they starve. Later that night, Ike attends a party held in honor of Sadie and his victory over Kurosa. Sadie runs up to him, complimenting his outfit. Ike returns the compliment, telling her she looks great too, but expresses surprise that she's attending given everything she's been through in the past day. Sadie insists that there's no way she could miss a party held in their honor. At that moment, Julia spots Ike and rushes over to embrace him, relieved to see him. She asks why he left without saying anything to her, but Sadie intervenes, reminding Julia that she can't act like this in public, even if they are engaged. Realizing she may have gotten carried away, Julia steps back to give Ike some space. Sadie then approaches Ike to adjust his jacket, and from their interaction, Julia begins to suspect that Ike may see Sadie as more than just his maid. As the reception is about to begin, everyone heads inside. The guests at the party immediately recognize Ike as the man who came to town, got engaged to the president's daughter, took down the strongest pirate, and refused to elaborate further. Ike, Julia, and Sadie make their way to the second floor where Eltria is waiting. Upon seeing them, Eltria compliments Julia on looking especially cute and asks Ike to take good care of her. Confused, Ike questions what she means, prompting Eltria to explain that while the treaty has been finalized, Ike still needs to fulfill her other condition, marrying Julia. Just as Ike is processing this information, an announcement is made revealing that the party is actually a marriage ceremony for Julia and Ike. Although Ike wasn't expecting things to move so quickly, Eltria informs him that if he refuses, she will call off the treaty. It's clear that Ike doesn't have much of a choice. However, before the ceremony can officially begin, a blinding light fills the hall, rendering everyone but Ike unable to see. Through the light, the demon lord appears and tells Ike that he must return immediately, as Sapphiro is in grave danger. The enemy alliance lured her into the castle and then surrounded the city, leaving no room for escape. Ike asks about the enemy's numbers, and Daracuten replies that there are about 5,000 troops. However, there is little time and Ike needs to act fast. She has prepared the Ice Brigade for deployment, and before he asks, confirms that yes, she could go save Sapphiro herself, but she wants Ike to be the one to lead the charge. Outside Alesta, General Rudol is briefed that the city is bound to fall sooner or later, given the intense pressure they've been under. He decides to lead the next wave of attack. Inside the city walls, Fiorentina is doing her best to fend off the human army, commanding the remaining ogre soldiers to hold their ground and prevent the humans from overrunning them. Unfortunately, the human forces include archers, who are shooting down many of the ogres before they can even reach the front lines. Fiorentina manages to shield herself from the arrows and charges forward, taking down human soldiers one by one. However, a human mage strikes her with lightning, bringing her to her knees. The mage commends her toughness, but declares this is as far as she'll go. Back at Avalia's, Ike and Sadie arrive via teleportation magic. Sadie marvels at how convenient it is, but is more thrilled that Ike's marriage to Julia has been postponed. Despite that, Ike still plans to return to Zenobia whenever he wants, given his ability to teleport. Moments later, Jaron bursts into Ike's office, clearly alarmed. Ike asks him what's wrong, and Jaron explains that while Ike was gone, the Alliance of Kings launched a full-scale attack on Avalia's. The city is in bad shape, with many civilians injured. Jaron reveals something unbelievable. Avalia's was saved by a young girl who single-handedly took down all the enemy forces. Understanding the situation, Ike tells Jaron that he must head to Alesta to support Sapphiro. He asks how many troops are fit for battle, and Jaron estimates that about 500 are still in good condition, though around 100 were injured in the previous attack. Even so, some soldiers will need to stay behind in case Avalia's is attacked again. Ike notes that they are severely outnumbered against the 5,000-strong enemy forces, and that without the other brigade leaders who are busy elsewhere, they'll be fighting alone. Just then, Gunther enters Ike's office and offers to help. Ike assures him that his people's contribution of firearms is more than enough for payment, but Gunther insists. The dwarven warriors, numbering in the hundreds, are ready to fight, and Gunther feels obligated to repay Ike for the kindness shown to his people. Ike questions whether Gunther is sure, as the battle doesn't involve the dwarves directly, but Gunther says he's fully invested in the outcome. If the demon army wins and unites the world, it would greatly benefit the dwarves, as Ike had promised them their own country. Ike acknowledges this promise, but warns that the demon army is struggling and might not be able to deliver. Gunther replies that even if they lose, he wants to stay by Ike's side to repay his debt. Ike thanks Gunther and accepts his help. He then finds out that not only the dwarves, but also the uninjured humans of Avalia's are willing to join him in the fight. Ike is surprised and asks if they are sure they want to fight alongside the demon army. The people respond that they don't know how long the war will last, but they want to defend their homes themselves. Under the previous ruler, they had suffered under impossible taxes and were worked to the bone. But under Ike's leadership, their quality of life has drastically improved, and any resentment they held against demons has faded, especially after the demons sacrificed themselves to protect the humans in the last battle. Without Ike, they might not have survived. Jaron, still reluctant to accept human aid, tries to speak up but is promptly knocked to the ground by Lilith, who scolds him for his attitude. Stady also piles on, mocking Jaren's foolishness. Left questioning his life choices, Juran lies on the ground while Ike addresses those who have volunteered. Ike explains that he will split the forces, sending one group to Alesta with him, while the other will stay behind to defend Avalias. He also gives special instructions to those staying behind. Ike addresses the troops staying behind and warns them that the Alliance of Kings may launch another attack while he's gone. He makes it clear that they won't stand a chance if that happens, so they are to surrender immediately. Resisting would result in them being branded as traitors, and the Alliance would likely show no mercy, possibly executing them all. The next morning, Ike and his forces set out for Alesta, a journey that will take about 4 days by land. With the support of the people, Ike's squad has grown in size, but they are still vastly outnumbered by the enemy. As they travel, Ike is deep in thought, working on a strategy to counter their disadvantage, while hoping that Sapphiro and her troops can hold it out until he arrives. Meanwhile, within Alesta, Sapphiro is doing her best to keep the human forces at bay, but her troops are being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. She realizes she needs to separate the soldiers outside the walls from those within, or her forces will be defeated soon. As she hovers over the battlefield, she considers using a meteor strike but refrains as she doesn't want to harm the orcs. Instead, she targets the troops outside the walls. However, before she can act, she's blasted out of the sky by a human mage and crashes to the ground. The mage orders his men to capture her, but Sapphiro casts a vine spell, entangling the soldiers and allowing her to escape. She shields herself from the mage's attacks with the vines and manages to flee to a rooftop. However, the constant use of her magic is exhausting her. She tries to cast one more spell to take out the soldiers outside the wall, but is shot through the chest by General Rudol and collapses, later captured by the enemy. By the following morning, Sapphiro's forces have been nearly wiped out. Human soldiers are now scavenging through the battlefield, deciding which demon body parts to collect for rewards. One demon still alive rises to attack, but is quickly incinerated by the mage, who seems to take sadistic pleasure in his work. Sapphiro, now imprisoned in a dungeon, is visited by Rudol. The guard informs him that she's still alive and suggests they execute her immediately, but Rudol refuses, recalling their past encounter. Sapphiro recognizes Rudol as the soldier she delayed during their first battle against the Alliance, regretting that she hadn't killed him then. Rudol reveals that he has orders to eliminate all members of the 7th Brigade, but he intends to use Sapphiro as bait to lure Ike and kill him too. He reassures her that as long as Ike hasn't been captured, she'll remain alive. He plans to keep her safe until he deals with the rest of the brigade. Meanwhile, Ike and his group continue their journey to Alesta. Ike is preoccupied with coming up with a strategy that won't lead to disaster. After several days of travel, the group takes a rest and Gunther approaches Ike. He informs Ike that the demons and humans have learned to work together, and that all the prototype weapons Ike requested have been made. Ike thanks him, but Gunther brushes off the praise. He does, however, have one question. Since they're nearing Alesta, he wonders when Ike plans to make the battle announcement. Ike explains that the situation is still too dangerous, and that he sent Jiron on a reconnaissance mission to get more intel. When Jiron returns, he brings bad news. He takes Ike to a vantage point where he can see Alesta's walls, and there, hanging from a pole, are Sapphiro's clothes. Though this confirms that Sapphiro has been defeated, Ike believes she is still alive. If she had been killed, they would have displayed her body, not just her clothes. The Alliance, needing to feed their 5,000 troops, likely wants to end the battle quickly by using Sapphiro as bait to draw out Ike and the other brigade members. Although Ike knows it's a trap, they can't ignore it. They must act quickly to rescue Sapphiro, even if it means attacking under risky conditions. Ike discusses strategy with Gunther, Lilith, and Jiren, planning their assault for dawn the next day. This then marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach our current goal of 20,000 subscribers.